for you that's new in recovery, I'm going to tell you this. Don't get clean for your mother, your brother, your sister, your wife, your dog, your cat. Get clean for yourself. I held on to that reservations thinking if I got clean, that everything was going to come back together. Do it for yourself and watch the miracle.
It's time for the Share Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
On today's episode of the Share Podcast, George D., now 6 years clean, takes us through 20 years of drug addiction, child abuse, and completely dysfunctional family life. At the age of 16, George begins using alcohol and marijuana to detach from his painful childhood trauma. Around this time, his sister goes public about child abuse in the home, and his entire life gets turned completely upside down, and George ends up homeless. By the grace of God, he is taken in by the Snyder family, whose daughters also went to school with George. It was there for the first time that George was introduced to unconditional love. For 5 years, he was a member of this family like a son. They never missed one of his high school events. In his early 20s, George begins hanging out more frequently with the wrong crowd, and his troublemaking finally gets him kicked out of his new home. With no place to go, George moves in with his brother and starts smoking crack. Over the next 15 years, George spirals out of control, and his drug use takes him to all new bottoms, until once again he ends up in a homeless shelter and living out of his car. Today, George is an amazing father, husband, and gratefully carries the message of recovery. Join us now as George takes us through the most emotionally charged story of recovery I've had the pleasure to host. You don't want to miss this episode. And after this interview, if you enjoyed listening to the Share Podcast, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. This will ensure we get ranked well on these networks, and that means more people will easily find the Share Podcast. This is the best way to show your support and help us grow. And finally, if you would like to make a donation to the Share Podcast, you can do so using PayPal. The entire amount of your donation will go towards maintaining and growing the show. On the top right corner of the website, you'll see a donate button. Just click on it, and this will take you to the page where you can make your donation. Thanks again for helping the Share Podcast become a huge success. Now back to the show. Hey, George, thanks for joining us.
Hey, I appreciate you inviting me here.
I'm excited to have you on the show today, man. How you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling awesome. I'm feeling great. It's a wonderful day to be alive.
I love it, man. All right, so let's get started. George, let's dive right in here. Tell us about how your life is today, your hobbies, what you do for a living. Take us into your normal daily routine, including recovery.
Okay. Well, every day I'm an early bird. I'm that person who gets up and jumps out of bed and starts singing and dancing. I'm grateful that I can get up another day. So when I wake up in the mornings at 5 o'clock in the morning, I come downstairs, I get my coffee, and I spend some me time. I spend a good 10 to 15 minutes just watching my birds outside and just relaxing so I can start my day on a positive note. Because if I start my day on a positive note, it tends to stay positive that day. Then after that, I get my wife, who's a bear coming out the woods. She does not do mornings, so I bring her a cup of coffee and her Diet Mountain Dew, and I'll say, "Good morning, beautiful," and she's, but that's just, that's how it works. And then I'm headed off. Then about an hour later, I usually leave about 6:15 in the morning, and I go straight to work. I work long hours. I work 12-hour shifts. Sometimes, I work 12, 13, 14 days in a row and get a day off and do it again. But my days off, I usually have a rotation where I do the 3 on, 3 off. So my days off, I usually hit 2 to 3 meetings so I can get spiritually full. Because I got to keep my tank full spiritually so I can continue to move on for the next day. And some days I won't be able to get the meeting, but I'll catch up with after like the 10 minutes of my home group or something or a meeting. I'll catch the last 10 minutes of it, and they usually go out to eat. So I'll get my meeting after the meeting. So it was great that I could sit there after a long day, talk to some addicts, eating some food, and that's pretty much my normal day.
Love it, man. You got a very full days, very full life, and the meetings after the meetings, not for nothing, but some of the strongest recovery and the strongest bonds that I formed were the meetings after the meetings, sharing a meal and just spending quality time with other recovering addicts. Inside and outside of the rooms, as long as you're with another recovering addict, we're helping each other.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the best time. I suggest that with anybody. Just go hang out after the meeting. You can get gut level honest. That's for the people who don't want to share the meeting. you get that one-on-one time, and it just makes you feel better.
Absolutely. So how much clean time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
Okay. I have 6 years clean. My anniversary date is October 15th, 2008. So I am on my 90-day countdown for 7 years.
Oof, love it,
Yeah.
man. So
big
exciting,
7.
man. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Lucky number 7.
Yes, lucky number 7.
And how old were you the first time you drank or used drugs? And more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Oh, the first time I ever used drugs was when I was 16 years old. Man, I tell you what, today I knew I had a problem because it was all a bunch of us high schoolers and it was after our Friday night football game. I played football and a bunch of us guys got together and we started drinking and everybody done passed out after 2 or 3 beers. And I'm still up the next morning at 6 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out how I'm going to get home to tell my parents I'm drunk. Obliviated out my mind, but it made me feel so good because there were some girls that I could finally talk to and I could dance and I could do this and do that. That's what my mind told me because I couldn't do that without the alcohol and drugs. That's what I was thinking.
Absolutely, man. It's so many of our stories parallel because as guys, in many cases we're very shy. All of a sudden you get a couple drinks in you, the liquid courage kicks in. And, I'm John Travolta.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Don Juan. And everything is just amazing.
For when I started using, I went from being like Donald Duck to turning into Batman, where everybody just loves me, But when it was over with, I turned back into Donald Duck and with my pockets out going, oh, my God, what have I done?
Oh, yeah. I can relate.
Yes.
All right, George.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, you're all warmed up, man. So I'm going to turn this show over to you. It is time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So, George, take it away.
Okay. Well, like I said, my name's George. I'm from a little teeny tiny small town called Cleveland, Ohio. It's pretty big. It says, and I always tease everybody because I live in South Carolina today. But I was brought up with my family was ate up with this addiction. My mom and dad, that's all I ever knew when I was growing up. My mom left me when I was 3. I haven't seen her still to this day. I was raised by my father and my stepmother. I have an older brother. I have a younger sister and a younger brother. And part of my story growing up is we didn't have much. The only thing that was ever really positive as a kid in my family is on Saturdays, my dad raced a stock car. But anything else, nothing else mattered to him. He was a very abusive father. When I was growing up, I was sexually molested by my father. He did that for 13 years of my life as growing up. I thought that was just normal. He physically abused me, sexually abused me for so many years that I thought that was just what every parent did. I was told that if I ever said anything, that he would kill me, that he would take my sister away from me, my older brother away from me, that he would make sure that I would never have a life, that I would never make it as an adult. And he always degraded me, and I was never good enough, and I was never going to amount to anything. And I believed that as a child. I went to school, again, like I shared, my dad was all about his racing, but when it come down to having new clothes for school or food for lunch, I didn't have none of that. I got my older brother's hand-me-downs with holes in the jeans, old nasty clothes, and that's what I had to wear to school. So what do kids do in school? They pick on you because you ain't got the nice new shoes. You ain't got the nice new clothes. So right then and there, my self-esteem was pretty low since I can remember. And I accepted that fact that I'm not going to be nothing, and I'm always going to amount to nothing. The one getaway that I did get into was when I was 8 years old, I got into football. And I was pretty decent. I wasn't no star player, but I played football, and I played all the way throughout my senior year in high school. So I had a great run at football, and I love it, and it's part of my life. But that was my scapegoat. That and running. I loved running cross country, and I realized that if I got involved with sports, I could get out my house. So I didn't have to go home after school and get abused. I realized then I was the type of kid who I'll never forget. This is how part of God doing for me what I can't do for myself. There were some neighbor girls that was close to me invited me to go to church. Well, I'm this crazy family that nobody talks to. And, they know that church is not part of my life or nothing like that. So they invited me to go to church. And thank God they did. In 1994, I was a sophomore in high school. And my sister was 4 years younger than me. And she went to school that morning. It was January 13th. I'll never forget this day. They have a program called DARE.
Yeah.
And I want to thank God for that program, because they come in and they talked about drugs. Of course, I blew it off when I went through the program. But my sister had enough guts to tell them that there was something going on in the household. And I didn't know my dad was doing this to my sister.
Oh,
And she's
wow.
told, and that changed my life from that day forward. I have to say that my sister will always be my hero.
So much courage. So much courage. Powerful.
So what happened from that point is I got separated. Nobody in my family wanted nothing to do with me. It was my fault that, my dad made sure he wrote a letter to my stepmother blaming me, that it was all me that did this to my sister, that he would never do nothing like this, that he would never hurt none of his children, and that he's just role model citizen. And he was this guy that worked for the road department. And I mean, he was just, everybody knew him in this county that I lived in called Painesville, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland. And for my sister, when she told what happened that day forward, we got separated. So I have a little brother and sister I haven't seen. And let's see, I'm 38 years old. I haven't seen them in 22 years.
Still to this day?
Still to this day.
Oh, wow.
I haven't seen them. She's on my Facebook page, and that's great. We can kind of message each other, but we haven't seen each other. Now, my older brother, Gary, he was older. He was already over 18. He took off, went to Tennessee when all this happened. Well, of course, my dad blames me. I go to school. It's all over the news. It's in the newspapers. I mean, it's just blasted. And all these kids in school, well, guess what? They pick on me even more. I'm that kid with all these anger issues who was tearing lockers off of doors, got suspended from school, beat my gym teacher up. I mean, so, of course, people are going to be like, look at him. He's nothing but a joke anyways. So that I even got made more fun of. Well, part of my story, like I said, is these girls invited me to go to church. Well, there was this wonderful family called the Snyders. And what they did was like a youth counselor, and they worked with the youth group. And they told, without not knowing me from Adam's apple, I was homeless at the age of 15 years old, had nowhere to go. They took me into their house. And you know what they did the very first day? They showed me love. They sat together as a family. They ate together. They prayed together. They did things as a family, like go outside and play catch with the ball. I always had resentment and anger and pissed off at the whole world because, I'd go to school functions or I'd play sports and everybody's mom and dad's there. And when they called my name, I didn't have nobody there. So this family knows I played sports. So I played football and I did wrestling and I did track and I did decent at all of them. They was there. They never missed nothing that I did. They showed me unconditional love that scared the living piss out of me. It scared me so bad that I ran because I didn't know. I was like the basic text talks about. We live like animals. And I was an animal locked in the cage for so many years through the abuse of mental and physical and emotional abuse that I never got to go to the mall as a kid. I didn't go to the movies. I didn't get to go do sleepovers. I didn't get to do none of that. And I was so bitter because of it. And this family takes me in. It shows me it's okay. And I'll never forget the first night I got to go hang out with somebody at the mall. One of my friends picked me up. And, I was about 17 at the time, 16, 17. And we got to go. And when I talk about mom and dad, this is my adoptive parents today.
Right.
She gave me $20 and I went to the mall. I come home with change and I stuck it on the table. Name one normal teenager that's going to give their parents back their money. We're going to keep that money. Well, I was so scared of that they were going to beat me because I didn't give them the change back. Because that's what kind of lifestyle I lived for so many years growing up as a child, that if I didn't do it right, I was going to get beat by it. And I would have nightmares. And this family did everything they could. They got me into counseling. They got me going to church, and I was doing right for a little while. Well, guess what? I decided to start drinking and hanging out with the wrong crowd. Yeah. Immediately, from the first time I used, my life changed immensely because I went from the guy that got picked on to when I used drugs and alcohol to I could finally talk to that female that I thought was kind of cute in school. Or I could finally talk to these guys that was, the cool kids. And everybody, that's how they knew me. They knew me from being the party animal, and that's the only way they knew me. And I went from like I said, a very abusive family to this nice Christian family. I went from making straight F's in school to straight A's in school. I graduated high school with a 3.4 grade point average.
Wow.
I got a scholarship. To go to college because I was going to go to college. But before that, I was supposed to leave June 19th, 1996. And when I graduated June 9th, I was supposed to leave and go to the military. I was going to go in the Air Force. I qualified, took the ASVAB test, and I'm set to go. 2 days before I go in the military, I had my recruiting officer and some kind of general show up at my house and told me to my face that we're not going to accept you in the military due to what your father did. You mentally won't be able to handle any kind of armed services.
Oh.
So I got disqualified before I got to go in. You want to talk about resentment all over again?
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about anger? Pissed off at the world because of what this man done to me? I don't have an opportunity to do what I want to do. So, I ended up turning in that scholarship right there in August, like a week or two later. They accepted me at Kentucky Christian College. I actually didn't even have all my stuff in until like 2 weeks after I went to school. That's how crazy it was. But I ended up going to college. I went for a few years, but I realized in a quick hurry that no matter where you go, you fall in with the same crowd.
Yeah.
My disease took me to the same people who drank and partied and did crazy stuff. Even though it was a nice Christian college, we found each other.
Of course.
So, it always talks about that if we move, it goes with us.
What is it? They say
And
that no matter where you go, there you are.
Yeah, no matter where you go, it might be a new place, same faces. And I understand that today. No matter where you end up at, you can fall right in the same crowd, even though your intentions are good, but that's exactly how it went for me. And I ended up failing out of college, got in big time trouble. I actually got a girl pregnant, got caught screwing her in the dean's office.
Inside the office?
Yeah, the dean's office, the big man's office. Well, she was related to the dean of this place, and she was in the music program, and I ended up getting caught having sex with her at a Christian college in his office, and I got kicked out. We both did. We both got kicked out of school. So right then and there, it was like, okay, well, my dad was right. I will always never have nothing. I'll be less than. I mean, my confidence level really shot downhill there. And the hardest thing my parents had to do was let me go. They said, George, we love you, but we got to let you go. You're messing up way too much. So here I am, 21 years old, ain't got a clue on how to live life, do nothing in life. I'm with my car and my bags packed, and that's it. That's all I have. So here's the bright idea I get. I call my older brother, Gary, and me and him connect because he's racing, and that's part of his life. And so I get to hanging out with him. Well, he introduces me to something called crack.
Ooh.
And it was one of the best feelings in the world. When I hit that thing, it was over with. But in the same sense, it took my whole life from me. I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was just trying to be cool. I want to be like my older brother. He races a stock car. He does drugs. I could do that too. So I get this bright idea that I'm going to build a race car. I don't have nowhere to live now. I'm going to sleep at the race car shops where I'm going to live. I'm good to go. So I build this race car, get me a little part-time job, and I build this race car, and I get out there racing, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Because then I realized how angry and bitter of a person I was, because every time I would wreck the car or something, I'd get out and fist fight. I would do crazy, stupid things like take somebody out for no reason, because that's what I was taught. I was taught you don't speak and talk to people about your problems. You fist fight first, and then you answer that, because that's the way I was brought up. I was brought up that you don't communicate with nobody. So that's just how I rolled. And I wanted to be just like my brother, who 4 years later decides he don't want nothing to do with me, kicks me out of his place and takes my race car and takes everything. So, here I am with nothing. I'm about 24 years old with nothing. Have nothing going on. I go to my real family now. This is the Drake family, my real family. And I go see my grandmother and aunt and uncle. They don't want nothing to do with me, because it was my fault that my dad's in prison. See, my dad got sentenced to 15 to 25 years in prison back in 1994 when all that happened. And I wish he would have got life. But it was my fault that he went to prison, so my family didn't want nothing to do with me. Of course, they was all drinking and partying. That's just how they did. That's how they lived life. Every day they get up and they used. That's just who I was. And that's who my family was. So here I'm kind of lost, confused in life. I don't have no friends, nobody to talk to, because I wouldn't allow nobody in because, see, I thought you guys did that to all the other guys. My dad destroyed me so much that I really felt that I couldn't open up to another man because that man's going to hurt me. He's going to physically and sexually abuse me. So I kept myself distanced from any man in my life. I couldn't do it. I couldn't have friends. I couldn't keep friends. I keep around to use them, abuse them, get what I wanted. Typical addict behavior. I'll get what I can from you, but screw you, because I was so self-centered and so pissed off at the world and had so much resentment and anger. That's just how I lived my life. I didn't care about nobody. I didn't care about nothing. I couldn't get close to nobody. I accepted the fact that I'm worthless, and that's just who I am. And I pretty much lived for the next few years kind of like that. I'd get me a job here and there and get myself on my feet and get me a place to live. And I'd do good for a little while. But then all of a sudden, them drugs just took over again. And every time that I would get myself straight and think I would do all right, I'd start using. And I lose it all. I lose everything all over again. Yeah, I pretty much accepted that. That's just was part of me, and I couldn't stay away from it. It made me feel good. It made me feel different. It made me always think that if I do one more, I'll be okay. Or insanity of this is for me was I would take like power, water, and all that, and I'd stick it to the side because I knew what day it was due. Well, by the time I got paid and I stuck all that money to the side, I'm being responsible this week. The insanity was is that money was all gone before 9 o'clock that night, and I just got paid at 6 o'clock that afternoon.
No.
Because I done blew it up all on drugs. I ended up forming anywhere from $800 to $2,000 habit a week, and it was all in crack cocaine and alcohol, and especially my big drug was marijuana. I started smoking that. That was one of the first experiences I had back when I was 16, which was the alcohol, but smoking some marijuana, and that's all I ever did. In order for me to function, I had to be somewhat high just to actually have a communication deal, actually go to work, actually talk to another man, actually do normal things that normal people do. They get up and go to work and they live life and they pay their bills. Well, I couldn't do that because I was less than. I'm not good enough to do anything else but beside that. And that's just how I felt. I couldn't get over the fact of what my dad did to me. I kept living in that past. I kept using that story to get girls to like me. I use that story because I make girls, oh, I get girlfriends, and oh, my dad abused me and I ain't got nothing, and blah, blah, blah. And they would feel bad for me. So that's how I had a relationship. Dishonesty is not the way to start a relationship with anybody. And that's just how I was. I was so dishonest and told so many lies, I believed my own lies. I didn't know right from wrong. And of course, going back to adoptive parents, once in a while I try to contact with them and they said, no, we can't have nothing to do with you until you get right.
Right.
And it, and that hurt. That really hurt. And I thought that was going to be my saving grace. And it was my saving grace as a teenager. But tough love was the best thing that they ever done to me. So I shared that my mom, my real mother, left me when I was 3 years old.
Yep.
Well, my grandmother passes and I was about 25 years old. And she shows up at the funeral. Here I'm living in Ohio. I ain't got much. I'm basically staying in between friends' houses, sleeping in the woods. That's just how I live life. And my mom shows up at this funeral and we get talking. Well, she lives in South Carolina. I didn't know that. And she says, well, why don't you move to South Carolina with me? Why don't you come on down here and get a new start? Nobody knows anything. You can get this fresh start. Great. Wonderful. Wonderful idea. Remember I shared earlier, no matter where you go, you take you with you.
Absolutely.
You goes with you everywhere. So I come to South Carolina, and within 3 days of living in South Carolina, my mother looks at me and says, listen, I don't want nothing to do with you. You got to get out my house. I can't handle you. I realized I made a mistake. So how do you think I feel now? My dad beat me, sexually abused me for all these years. My mother don't want nothing to do with me. Of course, just my life was a whirlwind. I mean, it was like, really? And thank God that in that short little 3 days, I actually got a neighbor who done construction work and got me on with his crew that I was going to start like the following week. Well, he actually opened up one of his bedrooms to me, and I got to stay there instead of me being homeless in South Carolina, not knowing anybody, not knowing where to go. I didn't even know how to get to the convenience store. I went from city life to where they still got horse and buggies down here, and a convenience store is 4 miles away. Up in Painesville, in Cleveland area, you can go to a store, a bar, and a church on every corner. Down here, it's a walking distance to get anywhere. So here, I'm really lost. But this guy takes me in. Well, come to find out, he's a drug addict. He's a drug dealer. I didn't know this. man, I'm right at home. I'm good to go. I can just do a little bit. He won't know. He won't know that I do the hard stuff because we just smoked some bud together, and that's what he did. And he sold bud, and he didn't know I was deep off the deep end with the other drugs. And of course, get on the construction site, get to talking to people, blah, blah, blah. I found the exact same people I ran with, just different faces. I ended up finding all the drugs I needed within like 2 or 3 weeks of moving to South Carolina. So here I am in the same road I am. I'm working all week long in the hot sun, doing construction work, building front, making pretty decent money, and I get paid by 5, 6 o'clock on Friday nights. I'm broke by 7, 8, 9 o'clock that night. And everybody's wondering, where'd all your money go? Where'd all your money? Well, one's too many, 1,000's never enough. That's just part of me. I just got high. I blew every bit of money I could. There for a while, though, I decided, well, I'm going to try something different. And, of course, I found a local racetrack. And it's a dirt track, and I come from a pavement track. And I decided I'm going to build a race car. Yeah, I don't got my crap together. I'm living with people here and there, and they allowed me to live there. And I built me a race car thinking this is going to be great. I get a new opportunity. And I get into racing and get right around the same people, same crowd. I raced 2 years down at the local track, and I turned into the biggest drunk ever. Everybody knew me because I fist fought everybody. Don't hang out with him. He'll use you. Don't hang out with him because he fights you. And that's just how it was. That's the reputation I had. Then I had this thought at the time, this wonderful girl who I met at the racetrack, and I knew something was wrong because when I went to work, it was on Saturday. I go to work on Monday. Of course, she spent the night Sunday. And by the time I get home, all her stuff's packed in my house. She's done rearranged everything. My furniture's outside. The dishes are gone. She's got all her stuff in there. No, just granted, I just met this girl 24 hours earlier, and by 48 hours, she's done moved in. 3 months into the relationship, she's pregnant. Tells me, I can't get pregnant, blah, blah, blah. Well, she's pregnant. Well, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to end up doing what my dad didn't do. I'm going to do something different. And I'm going to raise this child, and I'm going to be a father, and I'm going to do the right thing. And I ended up marrying her, and we had a son together. And then 2 years later, we had a daughter together. And, of course, I destroyed that. I didn't know how to have a relationship. I jumped to bed with her and then tried to figure her out. And I couldn't stand her. I could not stand nothing about her. We didn't have no common denominator because all I did was use. I took every bit of her money and still used trying to raise kids. Them kids didn't have anything. I ended up being the same guy that my dad raised, but the only thing I didn't do was abuse my children. And I could gratefully say that today. And a lot of times that passes from generation to generation to generation, and the buck stopped with me, and I thank God for that.
Yep.
But long story short, we didn't last but a couple of years. This is how the recovery started for me. Was back in 2007, Christmas Eve, my son kept saying, a couple of weeks before that, Mommy's with another guy while you're at work. My son's about 3 years old at the time.
Wow.
I'm like, no way. I thought he was his kid. So I come home Christmas Eve, 2007, and she's in bed with another man.
Oh.
I got home early to surprise her. Of course, that's her reputation. And of course, here's my deal is I throw the guy out the window and got the big old fight. Of course, I go to jail, and it's all my fault because I used and I did drugs, and I didn't care about my family. And needless to say, I got homeless. I mean, literally homeless to where I had nothing. I had nothing but like a little IGA or grocery bag full of clothes. That's all I had. She took the kids. She took everything. And here I'm homeless that middle of winter, January, February, walking the streets of this town where I'm living at, eating out of trash cans, cleaning up at bathrooms, just nasty, begging for people for change just to get high, just to get one more drink. I didn't think I had a problem, though. I didn't have no problem. I'll get this fixed. Well, I was so cold one night, I ended up walking into a council center, and I told this lady behind the desk that, hey, I think I got a drug problem or something. I need to go somewhere. Well, by the grace of God, that afternoon, they found me a bed for me to go to treatment. And that's unusual because you usually got to wait a couple of days.
Right.
For some odd reason, something opened for me, and I ended up going to a treatment facility. And that's where my journey started. I go to treatment and realize that, wow, this is crazy. I can't believe that these drugs whooped me this bad. That it took everything from me spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, destroyed my whole life. And I held all this resentment and anger because of this. And I get into treatment thinking And we learned in Narcotics Anonymous, if you have any reservations, you must address them before they address you right off the get-go. So I thought right off the get-go that if I get into treatment, get my stuff together, I'm going to get the wife back, dog back, kids back. Everything's going to be beautiful. I had expectations that she was going to accept me back because I went to treatment and I got clean. I started going to meetings after I got out of treatment just like they told me, and I didn't have nowhere to go. So my first 90 days, I was homeless. I was sleeping on the floor of a crack house, and I stayed clean. I actually got up and walked every day to a meeting. Sometimes I'd walk from one meeting to another meeting facility. And I told you, them country miles are 4 or 5 miles apart from each other.
Yep.
Well, I do that because they told me you got to do whatever you got to do in order to stay clean. You got to chase your recovery just like you chase your dope. So I did. In about 6 months, I graduated, Omar. Can you believe an addict graduates in 6 months? And I'm working stats, and I graduated. And then I realized one thing. By the time I got a little bit past 6 months, she's not coming back. I'm not getting the kids back. I'm not going to get nothing back. And I used. And when I used, they say it gets worse. Well, it did. The only orange I love today is my Cleveland Browns. I don't want to ever see a county jail orange jumpsuit, orange boxers, orange flip-flops ever again in my life. I go to jail because I destroyed a bar or something like that is what they tell me. And I end up going to jail, and I got smart in the county jail. I tell them in county jail, I'm listening to these other addicts in the county jail, and they say, well, if you plead guilty to your charges, you'll get out faster. Well, one of my charges was I picked up a domestic violence charge. I got in a fight at a bar. I accidentally hit a girl in the process because that's all I knew how to do. So I tell the judge, I got a drug problem. And he says, well, okay, that's fine. We're going to let you out, but you're going to have to go to meetings and get meetings signed off. Well, see, I was just smart act. I've already been to these meetings. I know how to do this thing. I was supposed to only go to like 6 meetings a month. I was going to meeting after meeting after meeting. So when I meet my probation officer every month, I'd go to like 60, 90 meetings in just that 1 month. Well, in the same process, that's what they say is people that go to meetings, meeting makers make it. Yeah. I didn't realize that something was working. And here in this process, all of a sudden I started going to these meetings and become part of my life. All I could do was strive and live for another meeting. I'm still homeless. I still ain't got nothing going on. But every day I woke up and I didn't have to use. Now, the turning point in recovery was at 9 months. I had that moment of clarity where they say that spiritual awakening. I'm laid up in a fetal position at my meeting, at my home group, crying for the first time. I've never cried, Omar, never in my life cried until that 9 months clean, laid up in a fetal position, hurting because I just dope sick and I couldn't believe all the lies and all the things I'd done. And that was my first spiritual awakening. That was my moment of turning around and moving forward. After that point, I was just the happiest guy that you would ever meet. I had nowhere to go. A couple of addicts would let me stay here and there, but I got up every day. I found a job to do. Ever since the day I got clean, I never went without food. I never went without my cigarettes. I never went without nothing. Everything was provided for me as long as I stayed clean. I'd find me little odd and end jobs and do this and do that, and I was just happy. Well, then they say don't make any major decisions in that first year of recovery. Well, I picked up a year chip, and there's this pretty little princess that come in the rooms, and I thought she was the whole world. I thought she was the Cinderella story, and we met each other. And the first time I actually had a friend, a girl that was a friend. I didn't jump in bed and get to know her. There was no intentions to get together. We spent a whole year drinking coffee and playing phase 10s, going to meeting after meeting. She would invite me over to her house to clean her house, to pay me money because I didn't have a job. Because some of us addicts was unemployable. We couldn't function and work. That's just part of my story. And she took care of me. And she took me to places that I never went, like Ruby Tuesdays and nice restaurants. And I never been to nothing like that. My whole life, I never done nothing like that. That's not who my story was. That's not part of me. I was scared to go in public. I didn't have nobody that I wanted to go. But she showed me some different things and took me out to nice places and bought me some nice clothes. This is a funny story. She threw my pair of tennis shoes that I walked for in 3 years that I was out there using. It was my favorite pair of tennis shoes. She threw them in the trash. I dig them out the trash. Does that sound like an addict too? That's just what type of addict I was. I was so scared. I was so scared to let go and move forward. I would hold on to that stuff because that stuff made me feel good. Because you remember when I growing up, I didn't have nothing. So I always accepted the fact that I was never going to be nothing. Well, I get a sponsor and I start working steps in this program. And I get a sponsor who's hardcore, come in the rooms, got clean in the 80s. And he just tough. And he looks like one of them guys on Duck Dynasty and long beard and mean. And I'm like, well, I'm going to pick him because I know that's what I need. I think because he likes football, I'm going to show him I like football too. We can get along great. Well, that was one of the best things I ever did. That man chewed me out. He told me to do, yes, he told me to do a gratitude list. For you newcomers that's new in this program, try a gratitude list. But see, ask your sponsor questions as you're doing any assignment they give you. Just don't assume and do assignments. So here's my gratitude list. I'm so excited. First time we're going to meet together with each other. And I talk about I love my Cleveland Browns. I'm a diehard sports fan. I love TV. I love clothes. I'm starting beginning. He looked at me and said, you're wrong. Tore that dang paper all up and yelled at me and said, wrong. I said, what do you mean I'm wrong? He said, what's the most important thing you need to be grateful for? Your recovery. How about recovery, God, your network, your rooms, and your books? Them are the 5 most things you need to be grateful for every day. If you don't have them 5 things first, if you put the wife first, you put your job first, you put anything first over your recovery, you will use. And that was the best moment I ever had was that gratitude list. And I share that with a lot of people that once you see, because it talks about in the base text, it talks about a grateful addict would never use. Now I understand why that man did what he did. And then here's me. I couldn't open up to him because I was such dishonesty and I had so many lies. I couldn't tell the truth. And then here's me playing the poor victim card because I'm sexually abused by my father. I can't recover. And he looked at me and said, hey, you know what? How about instead of we admit we're powerless over our addiction and lives unmanageable, how about we admit we're powerless over being a victim and our lives unmanageable? That was my turning point. I finally realized that I'm not a victim anymore. Oh, I am not a victim, and I refuse to be a victim. I finally accepted my life. I accepted who I was, that I'm an addict, I'm a junkie. I accepted the fact that I was abused by my father. And you know what sets a prisoner free? Forgiveness. I finally had to forgive and move forward. And from that point forward, I could talk to guys today. I could hang out with other men today. I could do things I never would have dreamed of doing, such as getting up and going to work, taking care of myself, living recovery first. I mean, my life has totally, completely changed once I finally admitted this man, who was my sponsor, who was the toughest guy you could get, helped me turn my life around by when he said that you're not a victim anymore. It was, I had to get out some outside issues and get some outside counseling. And then that took care of itself because it does talk about some things that, we don't come in here and we're not doctors, we're not lawyers in the Alcoholics Anonymous, we're not marriage counselors, we're not nothing. What we are is addicts who can help each other stay clean on a daily reprieve from this addiction. That's what we are. And there's nothing therapeutic more than one addict helping another. I share that. And that's emphasized because an addict understands how we feel. Another addict understands our crazy thinking, that stinking thinking. And that first 2 or 3 years of my recovery, that's all I did. I couldn't hardly find the positive. I didn't even know the truth from the lies. I just lived so many lies. And it all started on revealing itself. As I worked the steps and built the foundation in 1, 2, and 3, I realized the insanity that I was doing. I kept going back to what I felt was comfortable. Today, I don't have to keep repeating the same mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes in recovery as long as you learn from them and don't keep repeating them. I refuse to go back and be that man I used to be. I try to do the best today to be who I say, God, who's my higher power, who has carried me through this point. Because, see, I went through what I went through to get to here, to this point today, because there's an addict who is going to walk in them doors that hasn't got here yet, that went through the same story, that a man abused him and he don't know how to get through it. That's why I got clean. Some odd reason I'll be different from my family, and that's okay. For the rest of my life, I understand that I can't associate and go hang out with that real family. But after 5 years in the recovery, I call up my adoptive parents And I tell them, hey, life's going pretty good. And I start talking about God, and I talk about how I met this beautiful princess and she takes care of me. And I ended up marrying a girl just like my mother, by the way, identical to my adopted mother. And they said, well, why don't you come home? Why don't you and your wife come visit us? And let's see the new George. And it was one of the best things that ever happened. I have a relationship with them today. I have a relationship with their sons. It's like a brother to me. And they said the toughest thing we had to do was let you go. That was the best thing they ever did to get to where I'm at today. So I have a relationship with them today. And through working these steps, I can get honest with them and to tell them, hey, this is what I struggle with. Yeah, just because I get clean, do you think things are going to happen and all these miracles are going to happen? No. Narcotics Anonymous doesn't promise nobody nothing. We promise a daily reprieve is what we're promised from active addiction. So now, if I would have made a list when I got in here and said, this is what I wanted, I would have sold myself short because I've got to do things I've never got to do in my life. Drive a boat, go fishing. How about my little boy and my daughter? I had to go 4 years without seeing them because of active addiction, right? She didn't trust me, my ex-wife. I couldn't see him. Well, when I met this princess of a girl, she had a little cute daughter. Well, I was able to work on building a relationship with her and teaching me how to be a father because I didn't know how to be a father. I had to use these other men in the room to teach me how to be a father. I used these other men to teach me how to be a civil human being in public. And in that process, as I'm working on me, all of a sudden I get a court date and get to go to court, and I pay my child support faithfully, and I get to see my kids every other weekend. And my son says, Daddy, you're not locked in the bathroom anymore. You actually like to go outside and play ball with me. You like to go swimming. You like to go fishing. To hear that at your kids, that's awesome. That's what, for me, that's my hope shot. That my kids can see I broke, we Narcotics Anonymous broke that chain to where I actually enjoy going outside and playing catch with my son because I didn't get to do that. I enjoy playing Barbie dolls with my baby girl. I enjoy playing video games. And my stepdaughter, the relationship me and her have, she's got a real father she's in love with and she sees all the time. And I'm the goofy father. And she gets that. She understands that and loves me because of that. See, this is what recovery has done for me. Working these steps and these traditions and understanding how to live life. The steps save your ass, and the traditions teach you how to live life outside of here. Because, see, when we struggle at home on our money, we look at our traditions like money, proper seeds. Am I putting stuff in front of what's the most important thing? And I'm going to share this and kind of wrap it up with this. I don't take nothing for granted. When I walk in my home and I can flip a power on and I have a refrigerator full of food, that's awesome. I don't take for granted because I get up every day and I bust my tail because I know what it's like to walk in the house with no power, no food, no nothing. To me, it's an honor and a privilege to be married. It's an honor and a privilege to be a father, to be a husband, to take care of my kids and be involved with youth groups and other students and kind of be a role model for some people, And that's what I do today. And if it wasn't for Narcotics Anonymous in this program, I wouldn't be here. I'd probably be dead by now, to be honest with you. I don't know, and they say don't quit before the miracle happens. I keep coming back because I want to see that miracle. And I want to keep coming back to see that miracle. That means a lot to me. Even though I'm coming up on 7 years clean, I have a lot of things to struggle with, but I don't have to use. I went to jail clean on warrant for 21 days because they say you go to meeting makers, make it. Well, that first 2 years, I decided to go to meetings and stop going to my probation officer. And I stopped doing this. And, I put all my focus into the meetings, but I didn't take care of my responsibilities I was supposed to be taking care of. So I went to jail 21 days clean. I went to jail for a reason because it taught me some words like humility and being humble and reaching out to other addicts and saying, hey, look, man, this is what's going on. I don't know how to deal with it. And they teach me how to manage my bank account, teach me. I mean, the simple stuff is what can trip an addict up and go back out and use. So if I take care of the simple stuff, when the big stuff comes, I'm able to go right on through it. Because today I dance in storms. I don't live in them today. That's where I'm at, That's where I'm at today.
George, I got to tell you, man, I'm having a hard time myself.
I thank God, Omar. Thank you. Thank you for being here for me.
I tell you, man, I normally interject a lot during the interviews, and we have a lot of fun and when we're doing these, man, and I couldn't find the place to interrupt you. in your story. What a powerful story.
Thank you, Omar. If I can get clean, you can. That's tough. If I can get through it, you can. We dealing it, That's a very positive, happy man. Thank God for these rooms of recovery. I don't do nothing without God, and that's just part of me now.
There is no, for me, every question is answered with God. For me, as far as I'm concerned, he saved my life, and then, a drug addict like us that, for many years, we didn't feel like we deserved shit, man. We didn't feel like we deserved anything, that we had destroyed everything that was good in our lives,
yes,
including ourselves. We could not find the light in the end of this dark, miserable tunnel that we lived in for so long, until for many of us, death seemed like the only logical next step in our lives. And then you hear stories like yours, George, that are just so unbelievably powerful, that there are some of us that take recovery for granted, that take so much of what we have and so that is so beautiful in our lives for granted, and have no idea the pain and the suffering that others before us have had to go through, so that we have rooms, so that we have a safe haven to go and share our experience, strength, and hope. And I thank you, George, for that.
Hey, that's God doing for me what I can't do for myself. I take no credit in this, because see, if I allow my ego to ever get boosted, that's easing God out.
Yep.
Easing God out of my life. So I remain humble and I remain teachable every day. And I thank you for having this. This is what it's about right here.
This is exactly what it's about. It's one addict helping another, man. And you,
yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is like winning the lottery, the recovery lottery, and being able to put that in my recovery bank account. Okay?
Yeah.
My recovery bank account is full right now. It's actually so full that it's overflowing, and I'm obligated to go back out and carry this message of hope and recovery, because it's just amazing. And this has got to be one of the most unbelievably powerful interviews I've been on, George. I'm truly touched by your story.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. And I'm hoping that there's an addict out there who's struggling, that maybe can't get that out. It's okay. Get it out. Talk about it, because it's the only way it's going to set you free is to finally admit that there's something going on, and you would believe it or not. I have some guys that are part of my network today who was sexually abused just like I was, and we can talk about that stuff. And it's great that the more we talk about it, the less power it has over us.
Oh, that's for sure, man. That's for sure.
Right.
That's exactly what we do, man. Its power is only powerful because we don't share it, because we don't give it away. There's this poison that lies within us, and unless we share it, that poison will kill us.
Right, and I refuse. I share this all the time. It grows in the dark, but it disappears in the light. We hear that, Nene, but I refuse to go to a meeting. And if I go in there upset, I make sure when I leave that I'm happy and I'm joyous and free again, because I never want to leave the meeting the same way I come in. And that's what it's about. I just know that's where I get my charges. Like this afternoon, I'm going to 2 meetings this afternoon because it's my day off. And that's how I roll. My days off, I'm a meeting maker, because I know that's what's going to carry me through.
No question about it. All right, George. Whew, man, I got to tell you, this is... Ooh, okay. I'm pulling myself back in here. I feel God's. I got goosebumps, man. God's presence is strong right now. So we're gonna close up here, but the way we close up is for the newcomer, man, because really the newcomer needs to hear this story and needs to hear what it was like for you when you first came in. So I'm gonna ask you a few questions about your early recovery, and you can respond with inspiring and insightful answers that you can share with our newcomers. You ready?
Okay. Yep, I'm ready.
All right. Number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
As I shared earlier, I thought it was the country song backwards. What stopped me from getting clean is right there in step 1. It talks about having reservations. For you that's new in recovery, I'm going to tell you this. Don't get clean for your mother, your brother, your sister, your wife, your dog, your cat. Get clean for yourself. I held on to that reservations thinking if I got clean, that everything was going to come back together. Do it for yourself and watch the miracle.
I love it, man. Beautiful. All right. Number 2. Who broke what?
You heard that? The dogs. We have wiener dogs, and we have a house full of wieners. Our dogs had babies, and they got 3 puppies. And oh my goodness, I got 6 wieners in my house, Omar, and one just knocked over something off the table. And I got a recovered addict over here that's with me, and I was like, oh no. Of course, Princess is trying to take care of it all.
I love it. I love it, man. She's an amazing woman, man. You're a lucky man.
Yeah, she is. She's an amazing woman.
All right, number 2. At what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time it developed the hope that you could recover?
Okay, I was going to meetings, and in that 9 months, just laid up in the fetal position, Omar, and finally realized that, you know what, it's defeat me. I'm done. This is it. I'm not going to use no more. And that was my moment of clarity. That was my aha moment that woke me up. It finally got me a sponsor. I didn't have a sponsor before then. I finally got a sponsor. I started working steps. I started building my network. That was my moment. Moment of clarity at 9 months.
I love it, man. I love it.
So if you're new, hold on. It might take 9 months. It might take a year. Just keep holding on. Hold on to that. And then I believe that with all my heart. Hold on and watch what happens.
Don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle.
Yes, that's what my sponsor used to say. Don't leave for that miracle happens.
Yeah, I love it.
Keep it simple.
All right,
Yes.
Number 3. Do you have a favorite book you would recommend that you read in early recovery to a newcomer?
Yes, I have a favorite book. It's called Keep It Simple, and it's from the Hazelton Group, which they write a lot of the recovery books for us. And it's a meditation book. And, of course, we all got our step guide, and we got our basic text that works out a lot. But this little book called Keep It Simple is a daily meditation, and it actually talks both about drugs and alcohol, and it actually talks about other outside issues, that we face that we might. It's a book for me to help me stay clean, and I'm recommending it to a newcomer.
Perfect. And number 4, what was the best suggestion you ever received?
My best suggestion I ever received was called hope. Hope is helping one person every day. So that's the hope. And the hope side is that one person might be your own self, but that day that you don't feel good, you go to a meeting and now another addict sees you, you might have helped them stay clean that day. So it's not I no more, it's we, because we hope. It's all about hope, helping one person every day.
I love
the Crusades.
I love it, man. I have not heard that acronym, HOPE. Help one addict
hope.
Every day. I love it. No, help one person every day.
One person every day. And that person, yes, you can make it an addict, or that person, hey, how about it might be one of that normal people out there. One person, by you staying positive, might help that person just that day.
I love it, man. Great suggestion. Number 5, if you could give a newcomer only one suggestion, what would it be?
I would say 90 meetings in 90 days. Meetings every day. Meetings, so you can work on you.
I love it, man. Great suggestions, George. And before we say goodbye, I have one more question for you. Of all the meetings you have attended anywhere in the world, which group is your favorite, and where is that group located?
Okay. Actually, this meeting closed. It was my very first home group. It was called TGIF, Thank God I'm Free. And it was a really awesome group, but it closed. So I would have to say that my favorite group now is called No Strings, and we meet on Friday nights, and we meet right here in Charlotte. And these people in these rooms, they welcomed me because we just had to move to this area, and they have just accepted me, and this is my home group, and it's awesome. These are good group of people in there.
I love it, man. We have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
And as we say here in Costa Rica, Pura Vida.
Buena vida.
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview, or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.